Okay, we got the screen recorder. I'm just gonna check the recording volume. It's all good. Turn on the mic. All right, that's good. Good. Yay! Finally got everything up and running, and that took a while. Mostly because of the video issue. You know, I had to test a few things. Okay, so what we'll do today is a technique that I want you guys to kind of at least know about. You don't have to use it in your project. It's a really useful technique if you have certain elements on the screen where they are in groups. Okay, so and you want to share the same logic, you know, in each group. So this technique allows you to kind of take all that code from the event handlers. You know, you basically will be able to merge the logic to deal with different interface components into a subroutine, so you don't have to write it once. Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and start a new project just to demonstrate this part. So we'll go ahead and start a new project. We'll just call this project. I'll call this OOPS. OOPS, which stands for Object-Oriented Programming. Well, I guess no S over here. Object-Oriented Programming. Because it does make use of object-oriented programming concepts. It's not exactly the same kind where you can use in Java or C++, but it does share some of the attributes of that. Okay, so as I said, we will have groups of components where you can say, okay, I want this, this, and this, and this to be together as a logical unit. And we'll start with arrangements. We'll start with some vertical arrangements. I'll plug two of these things here. And inside these two vertical arrangements will be kind of identical user interfaces. So each one is going to have a, well, let's use a text box. So we'll have a text box and maybe a checkbox here. Okay, so we'll have two checkboxes for each, and the other one is going to have its own text box and two checkboxes as well. There we go. Oops. Put this one inside here. There we go. All right. So depending on what you want to do, I want these two boxes or these two vertical arrangements to basically act the same way. Okay, maybe they're used to enter prices of some kind. You want to check on certain things. So I want these to have exactly the same type of behavior. So let's go ahead and change the checkboxes here, just so that we can identify which checkbox is for what. So maybe we'll use the checkbox to indicate maybe one for gender. Okay, so we can use this one for gender. I guess it's not good for checkbox to use for genders. So let's see. Okay, let's see. I'm just trying to find out. I want a checkbox to affect the background color of the entire arrangement. Maybe we'll just do that. Invert background color. Okay. And then we'll have the second one to do something else. So we'll have the second one to invert the color of the text box itself. Invert text box color. There we go. And we want the second box to basically behave the same way. So we'll rename or change this one to invert background color, and then change this one to invert text box color. Okay. All right. And we want the text boxes to accept numbers only. So we'll click numbers only, and numbers only here as well. All right. So I want this. This is just completely for illustration purposes, so it doesn't really do anything useful. This is actually inspired by one of our projects. where in the project there are several boxes and they're supposed to behave in a very similar way. So instead of copying and pasting code and having to change some of that code specific to the components, we can now use just one single procedure to do everything. And we'll also use the concept of a list, so that this way we don't even need to keep track of all these different items. At the same time, we'll use a list to basically group things together, and it will pass that list around to do different things. Okay. All right. So this is the actual design. I'll use one button to, let's see. That's okay. I think we can use a different virtual machine to do this, so I'm not going to use a button to do the initialization. So in the blocks, there are several things to do. So in the blocks here, I'm going to do some initialization. So when the screen is initialized, I have to first initialize a global variable to deal with these two boxes. So we'll have a global variable, and we'll just initialize. We'll just declare the name here, and we'll just call this boxes, which is initially an empty list, because I will do all the initialization inside the initialize event. In the initialize event handler, I'm going to actually put something into boxes as a global variable. So we're going to set the boxes global variable. Well, we don't really need to do that. Instead, we can, I'm still debating on what to do with this. We can just do the add item. Okay, that will work as well. And we're dealing with the global variable boxes. Okay. So what we want to do is to represent each box in the designer view. We want to represent one box like this as an item in the list. So back to the blocks here, we're going to say, okay, let's make a list to represent that box. And what we'll do is we'll create a list of only one item, but inside that item we'll have multiple things. So we'll take one item out of this first. And then inside that one is going to be the multiple items that we want. Okay. So in here, this is the fun part. Okay, we are dealing with, if you go back to the designer view, we want the vertical arrangement, we want the text box, we want both of those checkboxes. So together there are four things that we need to deal with. Okay. So back to the blocks here, we're going to change the block. We'll change this to have four items. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 4 items. And this is the part where we have not seen any code like this before. I can actually go to vertical arrangement, go all the way to the end, and take this vertical arrangement one and put it here. I can do the same thing with text box one. Just scroll all the way to the end, grab it and put it over here. Checkbox one, same thing. So what I'm doing here is I'm really just grabbing all the components to put them into a single list, and that one single list becomes just one item that I'm adding to this item over here. I think that may not be necessary. I might have one level too many, so that would be fine. Okay. So I'm going to use the same type of statement. I'll duplicate this block for the second vertical arrangement. So this is the second vertical arrangement. This is the text box inside the second vertical arrangement. And then these two are the checkboxes in the second vertical arrangement. There we go. So what I have just done here is I have initialized a global variable, which is a list. And inside the list, there are 2 items because I'm adding one item at a time. The item has 4 components inside, so this item by itself is also a list. It has 4 items. The first one is representing the overall vertical arrangement that contains the 3 other elements. And then the other 3 elements will be the actual individual elements, or the components inside the vertical arrangement, which is a text box and 2 checkboxes. So are we doing okay so far here with the initialization of this code? Okay. All right. So what we want to do now is to say, okay, based on the state of these items inside the vertical arrangement, we want to do several things. Okay, we want to use the state of the checkboxes and the text box to make some changes. And I'm going to consolidate all that logic into one single procedure. So we use one single procedure to do this, and I'll just change the name of the procedure to say update box. Okay, which box are we talking about? Well, that's going to be my input. That's my parameter. Okay, so the parameter is just saying it is a box, which is going to be a list of 4 items, where I assume the first item to be a vertical arrangement, the second item to be a text box, the third item and the fourth item both being checkboxes. Okay, so if I want to remind myself, I will forget about this standard, after today. So I'm going to put some comments here and just say that, box is a list of 4 items. So we have a vertical arrangement, we have a text box, and then we have 2 checkboxes. Okay, just to remind myself, comments is really useful for that. Okay. So now I'm here to do all the updating. So I might want to look at the number in the text box. If the number is negative, I might want to change the color of the font itself to red, because that's the usual way of representing negative values. So I'm going to do that first. So what I'll do is I'm going to use a conditional statement, and it's going to be, it will have an else, because depending on whether the value is negative or not, I will change the color of the font accordingly. Okay, so what I'm comparing, going to math here, I'm doing a comparison. I want to compare the value of the text box and see whether it's negative or not. So one side is pretty easy. I just want to check if a value is less than 0. If it is less than 0, we have a negative value. So that part is pretty easy to deal with. What is difficult about this side, the left-hand side of the comparison, is now we are trying to look at the second item of box as a text box, and we want to refer to that as a number, as a numerical value. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, there's several things we need to do. So we can put these things together in any particular order. First of all, we get a box, and then we go to list, and then we go to select item, and it is an item of the box. It's going to be the second item. So we go back here, we put a 2 here. Now this is all assuming everything is correct, okay? If it's not correct, it will give you a runtime error. So this will give me the second item of a list, but it is not seen as a text box yet, okay? So in order to use it as a text box, you have to go to any component down here, and then go to any text box. Then you can select one of these items. And I am trying to refer to the value inside the text box, or the text of the text box. So I'm going down here to this particular thing, which extracts the text property given a component that is presumed to be a text box. So I'm going to plug this thing over here. And this is a string, so technically speaking, you cannot compare a string to a numerical value. So we'll go to math here and see if there's any procedure to explicitly control those two. Convert number from base 10 to hexadecimal. I think that's really just for base conversion, so that's not what I'm looking for. Format is the other way around. So I don't think we actually have any specific ways to do this. The other place to check is string, to see if there's a specific block to turn a string into a numerical value, and there's none like that. So that means this is kind of automatic. It's doing this without any explicit code. Okay, so do we have any questions about the condition of the if? I'm just looking at the number inside the text box to see if it is less than 0. Are we doing okay so far with that? Okay, and if it is less than 0, I want to change that text color to red. Otherwise, I want to change it back to either black or some other color. Okay, so we go to any text box again, and then we look for the block that can change the color of the text itself. And I think it's text color. There we go. So we want to do 2 of these blocks, but we'll deal with that later because we have some duplicate stuff here. And then what we need to do is to replicate this block here, which is representing the text box. And we want to change the color in this case to, let's say, red, because it's conventional that we use the color red to represent negative values. So we change this to red over here, and then we replicate this block to change it to some other color. Let's say, let's pick, what do you guys want? Just black? Okay. All right. Excuse me. So I got one thing done. So let's check and see, make sure this works first. Okay. So in another terminal, I'm going to start up my AVD, the Android Virtual Device Manager. So let's see, we are already at the right place. Oh, not, I guess not. Go to Tools, Android. And then we'll go to Platform Tools, Startup ADB, Start Server. And the device is already here, it's just starting up. I updated my phone over the weekend, and then the phone feature stopped working. Well, it's okay. I just had to wait another 24 hours for another update, and it was all good again. That's because I was running the latest and greatest version. I was running nightlies. They call those nightlies because they recompile and the whole thing every single night. So they incorporate all the changes, all the updates. Some of those may not be well tested. So as it turned out, the phone app was not well tested. It didn't work. All right, so we got this up and running, and we'll just go back to App Inventor here. Oh, it's not going to do a single thing because nobody is calling the subroutine. Okay, so we need to invoke the subroutine here. So what we'll do is, in this case, we just need to go to text box 1 and just say that when the text box lost focus. Well, let's see, is that the best way to do it? Yeah, I guess so. Okay, when text box 1 lost the focus, we are going to invoke the procedure, which is to update the box. And then we have to select which box we are talking about. So this time we have to go back to the global variable boxes. This is the first box of boxes. So we go to lists, and then we just say, let's pick out the first box out of the 2. So we're going to get the global variable boxes, and this time we want to specify the first box, like that. And then when text box 2 has a lost focus event, then we're going to do the same thing, except this time we're going to use the second box. There we go. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, when I was doing the divide 2, I used this lost focus for the divisor, and it wouldn't take the second piece of information. I had even when I hit the button, it didn't do it. It would take the first part because that lost focus. But the second one, even when I hit the button, it wouldn't take the second piece of data.
So whatever you have in the text box, it wouldn't take it.
Correct.
So you will have to lose the focus, go back to the first one, then it will take both.
Probably so, because something needed to be additionally done.
I see.
Yeah, so.
Well, that's good
Just
information.
a heads up, because it didn't work for me when I had two text boxes.
I see.
And I tried to grab the data from the second box.
Okay. All right. But thanks for letting us know. All right. So we'll go ahead and build the APK. Now this can potentially be very useful because it means that it doesn't matter how many times you replicate something. You can basically consolidate your code so you can link multiple components to behave the same way, or just write a single subroutine that handles a particular component. But I'm only making use of one at this point. I'll show you the code to make use of the additional components. Come on. And by the way, this technique did not work at least a year ago. I tried it and it didn't work because I was thinking it would be nice if I could do this. So I actually tried that and it did not work. But now it does work. I tried it already. We just need to wait for the file to save. Never asked me. I didn't miss it, right? It did not prompt me to save a file. We'll give it one more try. It just stopped. Okay, there we go. Alright, we'll save OOP into the temp folder, switch back to the command line, and then we can just run adb install -r the APK file. Okay, so all installed. Switch to the emulator, and then run our OOP app here. There we go. All right, so we want to try different numbers. So we'll try 12, check, and then switch to the second one. Okay, that didn't seem to do anything because it's already black. Okay, so this time we'll try a negative value, -2, and then we have to lose the focus first. So when we lose the focus, you can see how this one is now changed to a red color. Okay. So that it means it's working. So we can go back to the first one and change that too. So we'll change the first one to a negative value as well. And then when we lose the focus, it will change it. And then the second one, we can change it back to a non-negative value. Let's change focus. You can see how the color is getting updated correctly. Okay, which is good. But this is not even the best part of this type of code arrangement. Because the best part of this code arrangement is what if the checkboxes and whatnot would also impact how we display things, and we may also want to change the background color of the entire arrangement. Well, that makes it pretty easy with with everything already in the list here inside a box. In other words, box is a container. It's containing everything that we need in order to make use of that logic. Okay. So in box, we can now say, oh, I also want the arrangement itself to change its background color, or hide it in certain cases. Okay, well, that makes it pretty easy, because all you have to do is to go to any vertical arrangement, and anything you can do here, you can do it to the arrangement of the box. Okay, we certainly don't want to change any one of these. But we might want to change the background color, just like this one. So in addition to changing the the color of the text, I also want to change the background color. But this time it is not the second item of the box itself. It's going to be the first one, because this is how I arrange it. And let's say we want to change it to a different color instead of being kind of like a bright saturated red. We want it to be kind of more of a pink or less saturated color. Okay, there we go. And then with the other one, we can do about the same thing, except it's going to be a maybe grayish color of some kind. And so we go back here, we just change it to a kind of pale, kind of grayish color. So now I have made some minor changes to only one procedure of the entire program, but it's going to work on both text boxes. In other words, this technique, by the way, in programming is called abstracting, because what you're doing is you're taking code that would be specific to the components into, you're losing all the details, quote unquote, losing all the details. So which is basically also, the other word to describe this is parameterizing. Okay, so instead of using global variables and specific components, you're now saying, oh, it's a part of the parameter to specify which text box and which vertical arrangement we are dealing with. And then using a box as a single input into the procedure, instead of taking 4 individual inputs into the procedure, see how we only have box here? This is called encapsulation. The box is encapsulating the components inside the box. Now I'm doing some quote unquote bad thing because I'm using the indexing to imply which position is what, instead of using a tag name. Using a tag name or using a key value pair is the better way to do it, but it's also kind of more cumbersome. You have more to set up and stuff like that. So if I just want to do it kind of like quick and dirty, this way is actually okay, but it's done by position. Okay, so we have done this, made this change here, and then we'll go ahead and change my test the code again, because I just want to show you how little change I have to make to the entire program that will basically make changes to both of those arrangements. Okay. So there we go, save, overwrite, and then re-upload the application, the APK file, and then we can go back to the virtual machine, test it again, and once again we'll try at -5, and you can see how the background color is changed automatically. And then with this one I can use a non-negative value. Just pressing the enter key will get the trick done. Okay, if you just press the enter key, it will move the focus onto the next item, which means it's going to trigger the execution of that code. So do we have any questions about this part? Anything you guys want to ask about? Nothing? Now I know one project can make use of this code. Is anyone else going to make use of something like this? Okay, so it's going to be helpful with your project too. Okay, great. It's just a good way to look at things too. Just in general in programming, it's a good thing not to have to copy and paste and then just modify the code a little bit. In any class, in any programming class, if you copy paste and then just modify some code that you have just pasted, you usually have to ask yourself, is there a better way to do it? Now, depending on the programming language, there may or may not be a better way to do it. But if there is a better way to do it, this is better, because if I want to change anything, I only have one place to change instead of 2 places to change. I'll give you an example. If I don't want the gray to be the color for a non-negative value, if I want it light green, this is all I need to do. And it will affect both boxes. Okay? Okay, so let's go to the checkbox and see what we can do with the checkbox too. And I think it's to invert the color, invert the color of the entire background. Now there's no way around this part, which is where do we get the event handler? Because the event handler has got to be coming from the component itself, and there's no way to abstract this part. Okay, so this part is kind of difficult to deal with, kind of impossible to get around. And then inside the event handler, it doesn't have a way to quickly let you know who is generating this event. So there's no way to get around that one. You really just have to associate the first box of the boxes to checkbox 1. Okay, that's Just no easy way to get around this one. And then checkbox 3 is going to be the same thing. When checkbox 3 has a state change, then we have to call update box. But this time we have to remember this is the second box that we are dealing with. Okay, so we are now taking checkbox 1 and 3 into consideration. So in the code here, we can now say, okay, let's go ahead and change the color of the entire box based on the checkbox. So this way we'll start a second conditional statement. Okay. And the second conditional statement is going to use the state of the checkbox as a clue as to, okay, what are we going to do with this? So now once again we go to any component, go to any checkbox, and see where we can get the state of the checkbox here. It's not enable. Enable simply means, can we click on it? I think it's either value or checked right there. Okay. And checked by itself is a Boolean or true false value already, so it doesn't need to compare to anything. You don't have to compare the checked state of a checkbox to true or false to turn it into a Boolean, because it is already a Boolean. Okay. And then we'll just replicate the block here. Which component are we talking about? Well, we're going to copy this code here, and then we'll change the number, because the checkbox is the third item of that list. Okay. So now we can check whether the checkbox is on or off. So we want to invert the color of the background, and let's see what we can do with colors. Now with colors, we have all of these things here. We can also make color, and there's a split color. So when we talk about inverting a color, we can do it this way. We can basically split the color first, and then we can invert every single component. Okay. So we'll go to split color. Okay, we know this is going to be useful. And then we also know that we have to combine the color again. Okay, so we're going to take these. Now, we just have one more thing to do. When it splits the color, my guess is it's going to split the color into 3 components in a list. So we'll see what is the description here. A list of 4 components representing red, green, blue, and then the alpha. Okay, so it's going to give me a list of 4, not a list of 3. Okay, but it's close enough. We can work with that. So this time I do need a local variable to store the split color. Okay, so we'll set the color component here to be the split color of the original background color. So we'll basically pick up the arrangement background color. So once again, we go to any vertical arrangement. This time we are not setting the background color. We are just we just need to know what it is. So we put this block over here, and we put this block over here. And this is what I really don't like about graphical programming, is when I write more code, I need to find places to stash everything else, and it takes up a lot of space too. Okay, so we do have the majority of this code already done. Okay, so we are creating a local variable color, which is representing the color out of splitting the background color of the vertical arrangement. And the first item of box is assumed to be the vertical arrangement. Is that okay? All right. So now we just have to change each component to something that is its own inverse. Okay. So we'll keep this one around. We'll need it later, but not right now. Okay. So there are 2 ways to do it. The first way is to use a loop to go through each and every single item and invert each and every item by itself. Not really sure whether this will work or not. Okay, there are several factors that may make this not work, but we'll give it a try. So once again, we have to move things around a little bit to make space. All right. So the list that we're talking about is color, which is going to be a list of 4 items because it has RGB and then the alpha. But I'm going to try something that may or may not work, so we'll give it a try. My guess is it's not going to work, but we'll give it a try first. So I'm going to set the variable, which is item, to 255 minus its current value. So go back to math, do a subtraction, and the first number is 255 minus the value of item as it is, okay? So we'll give it a try, okay? It's probably not going to work, and the reason why I think it's not going to work is because I think item is just a copy of the item in the list, okay? So whatever changes I make to item doesn't make it back to the list itself. But this depends a lot on the actual implementation of the for each block. So I'm just guessing here, okay? So the only way to know whether this will work or not is to build the app, test it, and see what is the actual result. The documentation of App Inventor is unlikely to describe whether this will work or not, because something like this is fairly advanced programming, and to explain whether it's going to work or not requires a certain amount of background knowledge of programming languages already. So we'll just go ahead and give it a try. I'm guessing it's not going to work, and I already have a plan. If it doesn't work, we'll have a way to fix it. So let's give it a try. OOP. Change this to 0.5. It's all good. And make this one negative 0.6. Okay, so everything still works as before. But when I click on Invert Background Color, that should have changed the color already. And obviously it has not. Oops. So we know that that feature is not working, which is okay, because as I said, I did not have a lot of hope that it would work in the first place. So this is not too bad of a problem, because all I really need to do is to make a second list, okay? And a second list which is going to be new color. So new color is a second list which is empty to begin with. So it is initially empty. And then what I'm going to do here is every single time I invert the color of one item of the original color, I am going to append that to the second item, which is new color. So I go to lists here, and I just say add items, which is just one in this case, to the new list, which is new color. Okay. Well, there's another reason why it's not working. I just realized that. I forgot about that too. Is I never really changed the background color back. So let's reserve this code for later. I wonder how many levels I can undo here. Has anyone tried to undo changes? No? Is there an undo? Okay, let's see. There's no undo that I know of. Okay, that's okay. I still remember what the original code looks like.
Technically, the only way to undo would be to set a checkpoint and then go back to certain checkpoints.
But that's the way I played my StarCraft back in those days. Yeah. All right, so I forgot about that. So let's go ahead and, because I made all the changes to color, but I never really put the color back to I never set the color of the vertical arrangement. So all the changes might have actually happened, but since I did not make the changes back, I don't know. Just trying to decide whether to do it this way or not. I suppose not. Okay, let's just change this one, duplicate this block, and stash it down here. Keep going, keep going. Right here, okay. and we want to change the color. So once again, we have to move stuff out of the way. So we don't want this pink anymore. We want it to be the new color. So we need this block to be actually here, so the new color is still around by the time we want to use it. All right. So I think this will work. Okay, the first loop is going to change the color. And does everybody can everybody see how 255 minus get item is inverting the color? Because the original range of the color or any value within those four, they're all going from 0 to 255. So when you want to quote unquote invert the color, subtracting the original color or the original value from 255 will give you the exact opposite of what it used to be. Unless it is all gray. Okay, if it's all gray to begin with, then you just get all gray back.
Because what you're doing is at the end you're fully saturated at white, and then you're fully saturated at black.
Oh, that's
so
right.
255 minus 255 is going to give you black from the white, and then everything else is going to be in between.
That reminds me of one thing, which is there are 4 items here, but when we use put the color back together, it only wants a list of 3 items. So we have to toss the last one before we plug it back in.
Transparency, the alpha.
Yeah, the transparency is not useful when we set the color. So we have to kind of get rid of the last one, which is going to be a list operation. You can remove an item in the list. So we have to remove from new color, which is going to have 4 items. We want to remove the last one, which is the alpha. There we go. All right, so we'll build the app again, give it a test. I wish App Inventor has a better way of debugging applications, like you can stop a block from execution and they can single step and do all the usual debugging techniques. Doesn't seem to have the ability to do that.
You can't disable the block. I think that's one of the options.
Yep, you can disable a block, but you cannot say, okay, I want to stop here. Let me take a look at this variable, and then I want to single step through the rest of the code. So it doesn't have the usual conventional debugging support. But then again, it's really a kind of like it's already a lot easier to work with compared to Java. There we go, let's start this up. 1.5, so everything's working. Okay, so it's complaining the operation background color cannot accept the argument. 102.0.102. Okay, so it did crash because when we get to this block, okay, it changes. This is supposed to change the background color to a new color. I know why. It's a type issue. Even though this is called new color, it is really just simply a list of 3 values. It is not a color yet. That's why I had this block here. I forgot about this guy here. Okay, so we have to make a color out of a list and then plug the color into here. Okay, so type checking error. It's called a type checking error because get new color is only giving you a list, but this block here is expecting a color. So this gray block here called make color is converting the types. It's converting the type of a list of 3 items into an actual color. So anything that is expecting a color can now do it. Okay, so that should fix that problem. Go ahead and.
In the make color, is it going to expect an alpha?
It doesn't. Ooh, that's a good question.
Just thinking.
And we should not be inverting the alpha either, because otherwise something that is completely opaque will become completely transparent.
Right.
Yep, it's optionally alpha, so we don't need that.
Okay,
Optionally, which hopefully means if alpha is missing, it's completely opaque.
doesn't care.
Which makes sense to me.
Okay.
That if you're missing alpha, it is defaulting is the default is opaque.
Just yeah, okay.
So give it a try. Back to here. 5, and then we invert the color. So if you just think about it, the color is currently a light green. So when you invert a light green, what do you get? Green is RGB, the G. So when you get rid of the G, and then you turn on the other channels, which will be red and blue.
Purple.
You get purple? Yep, something along that line. So, yep, dark purple, because it's light green versus dark purple. So that makes sense. All right, so let's try a negative value here, -5. Okay, this is red, so when to RGB, you get rid of the red, you get the blue and the green left.
Yellow.
Cyan?
Yellow.
Nope, because
Green and
a
blue.
yellow requires red and green. That's
Well, it's
yellow.
red and green equals yellow.
So if you only have blue and green, you get cyan, I think.
Oh.
But it's going to be a really dark hue of cyan. Yeah, okay, close enough. There we go. So are there any questions about what I just did? Nope, okay. So I'm not going to make this program any fancier than it is, but the whole point is, if I want to make use of the other checkbox, or if I want to change the logic of how the checkboxes or the values are utilized, there's one centralized place of update box that I have to deal with. It would look at every single thing that relates to the box and change how it is supposed to be displayed. And if I make 3 other boxes, just like this one, just like these two, I don't have to make any additional changes. I just have to make the calls to update box from the event handlers. So it is a kind of more of an advanced programming technique, but I think it might be helpful for people with certain things that I have to duplicate this logic over and over and over again. Yep.
When you get a chance, can you go over the web viewer component for on implementing JavaScript, how you send data out?
We can absolutely do that. In fact, I think unless there are additional questions related to this technique, we can just move on to that one. Any questions about this one? No questions? Okay, I'm gonna leave this one. If you want to, I can upload it into Moodle, and then you guys can download that. But we'll start a new project. We'll call this one JavaScript JS. Just JS. Now this is an interesting, also, and very kind of more of an advanced topic, because it's making use of the web viewer component, not web, but web viewer. Okay, so you have to be very specific about this one. This one is only making use of the web viewer. It sounded like Elmer Fudd. Okay, so the first thing you want to determine is, do you want it to be visible? Because it doesn't have to be visible. Okay. Because what I'm trying to do is to make use of JavaScript that is implemented as a feature in the web viewer. Okay. So before we go any further, because not everybody in this class has exposure to JavaScript, I am just going to click on the link here so that you know what JavaScript is. I'm going to use Wikipedia instead of the home page of JavaScript, because it gives you a more kind of an overview. So JavaScript, if you just read the first paragraph here, there are a lot of links, a lot of hyperlinks, because a lot of technical terms. So JavaScript is a high-level, dynamic, untyped, and interpreted programming language. I'm not really sure how much of these terms you're getting. I can explain each one kind of briefly. High level means it's not low level. Low level means assembly language programming, machine code programming, and that kind of stuff. You don't want to do low level programming. High level is good. It's a good feature. dynamic refers to to describe a class of high-level programming languages which at runtime execute many common programming behavior that static programming language perform during compilation. Now, what that really means is a lot of problems, errors, mistakes, and stuff like that cannot be caught early on. They can only be caught while the code executes, which is a good feature and a bad feature. Okay, it's a good feature because you don't have to spend like 20 minutes to recompile a program that is really huge, just because you made one line, one change to one line. Okay, which is what you have to do with the Linux kernel. You have to recompile the whole thing. If you mess up the syntax of one line, it's going to tell you after 20 minutes and say this line is no good. The whole thing aborts. Okay, you don't get anything useful out of it. But the problem with the dynamic, which is a result of interpreted, is it's hard to debug these programs because the tool cannot help you locate these problems. Untyped means variables can be of any type, which is kind of like what we have been doing. The variables in App Inventor doesn't have to lock into a particular type. One moment it can be a number, the next moment it can be a string, the next moment it can be a Boolean, and so on and so forth. So it's untyped, unlike C and C++ and also Java. Those are called strongly typed languages. It has been standardized, and so on and so forth. Along HTML and CSS is one of the 3 core technology of World Wide Web content production, and so on and so forth. So most modern web browsers implement a fairly good common subset of JavaScript. The compliance level depends obviously on which browser you're talking about and which version of that browser you're talking about. It's a first-class JavaScript is prototype-based with first-class functions, making it a multi-paradigm language, supporting object-oriented, imperative, and functional programming styles. What that means is, it's a really, really flexible programming language. If you know how to program in a conventional, quote-unquote, conventional programming language like Visual Basic or C and C++, you can program in JavaScript already. But some code in JavaScript can look really kind of daunting for people who are not used to all of these programming paradigms or programming methods. It has an API for working with text, arrays, dates, regular expression, but does not include any I/O such as networking, storage, or graphics facilities, relying for these upon the host environment in which it is embedded. So, which means it has common concepts of types of values they can work with. API stands for Application Programming Interface. So that means what is the it's an understanding of what it can do. Okay, functions you can call and stuff like that. Okay, all right. So why is this useful? It's useful at least for one thing. It's regular expressions. Okay, so I'm going to right-click on this one, open a new tab. This is a huge topic all by itself. I'm not going to really fully explain what regular expression is, but in a nutshell, regular expression is a very concise way for you to specify what a particular input is supposed to look like. Okay, for instance, let's say you want to deal with a name. Okay, a first name and a last name, and you want each name to start with an uppercase letter followed by at least one lowercase letter, but you can have many lowercase letters after that. Okay, so as a regular expression, that can be done by saying uppercase, which is A to Z, but just one, and then lowercase at least one, which is lowercase A to Z. But if you want to say at least one, you can use the symbol called plus. So this means one uppercase letter, at least one lowercase letter, but you can have any number after that one. Okay? Then you can specify an empty space here and repeat this pattern as the last name. So obviously that's not going to catch everything because some people have hyphenated last name. So you can make this longer to accommodate for different things. You can make certain components optional as well. I think optional is a question mark, and you can make an entire group optional. So if you want to hyphenate your last name, the hyphenated part to be optional, you can do that. Okay. So it's just a really kind of powerful way to check, to validate the input. What about zip code? It has 5 digits, right? So to specify exactly 5 digits and no missing digits, you can specify 0 to 9 in square brackets, and then you can specify exactly 5. Now you can replicate this 5 times, which is copy and paste, so we don't want to do copy and paste. And if we want to specify exactly 5 times, if I remember correctly, well, the 5 has to be in parentheses or something. I don't think it's parentheses, I think it's curly braces. 5 times. Well, we can check we're right on that page, okay? So we can just go here and take a look. Because you want to specify how many times something can be repeated. There we go. MN, so you basically specify 5 as the range of number of repetitions. So 5 specifies exactly 5. Because the first number is the lower bound, the second number is the upper bound. Social security number, pretty easy because you can use this technique, specify 33, a dash, and then use this thing to specify 2 more digits and then 4 more digits after that, after another hyphen. So you can see how flexible it is. It's really, really good for validating the input of any type of user input. Okay? And it is sorely missing from App Inventor. App Inventor does not give you any regular expression capability. So on one hand, now we have App Inventor, which is great for putting user interaction components on the screen. It's great for doing simple stuff, but when it comes to input validation, it's like, okay, if I have to code all the logic to check the name for validity and stuff like that, that's going to take up a lot of blocks in App Inventor. But JavaScript has got this all done already. Okay, there's no need for us to fuzz. It's already done. Okay, so now the question is, how do we link those two together? Now, once again, this is for advanced programming. I'm not expecting you guys to use this feature in your project. You don't have to, but if you find it useful, go ahead and use it. Okay. So I'm going to put this, I will go to the web viewer description here because I want to show you where to find the information. And we're just going to read this a little bit. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but there is something here that is useful. So right here, it says you can use the web viewer .webViewString property inside JavaScript so that you can set that in App Inventor, and then the JavaScript program can pick it up from inside JavaScript. So your JavaScript can now do whatever thing it needs to do, and then when there's a result to pass from JavaScript back to App Inventor, you're going to use WebViewString again as a communication means. So the example here is if the web viewer opens to a page that contains the JavaScript command blah blah blah, and you set, in JavaScript you set your web view string to hello, then the web page will show this. Now I'm not even concerned about what the page is going to show, but I'm more concerned about the property that I can check when I'm in App Inventor. And you can see that Web Inventor can check and set this particular property, which is web view string. And it's got several methods. I just want to go through these methods here. This one is useful, or this one, both of these are useful. Go home is going to load the home URL page, so you can write your web pages in HTML format and have it embedded into your application. Load the page at a given URL. That's helpful as well if you have multiple pages or multiple JavaScripts stored in your application. So let's kind of go through this, just play with it a little bit first, okay? So we'll play with this with just plain HTML, nothing, no scripting just yet. So we'll go to accessory, use any type of text editor, create a simple web page, okay? No head, and then a very simple body. Body.
Don't you have to open up the HTML tags or no?
Yeah, I guess so. And then we'll just use a H1 to say, this works. That's all I'm gonna say, because I just want to display that just to make sure that this is working. So I say, save the file to the temp folder as test.html. Okay, so this is, if you don't like to work on your own HTML, your code, there are plenty of ways to author HTML without knowing a lot about HTML. You go back to the App Inventor page, and it's all kind of messed up because of the display here, but that's okay, we can fix that. And then you upload the file just like you would with a graphics file or any other resources, but this time it's an HTML file. Just click OK, now the file is uploaded. And that's all you need to do. So if we go back to the documentation page, which is this part here, you can use the, let me see if they describe here. Well, maybe not here. I just want to show you guys how to refer to a file that is in your resources here, in your media resources. But I can find that in files. So if you go to storage and look at the help information of file, it's the same way, it's the same convention. So the convention is okay, let's see, down here. You have seen that already in the other application that I have written. Let's see. If it starts with a slash, it is created relative to the SD card. But if it's a built-in resource, it actually has a different way to do it. 2 slashes, that's it. Okay, so we'll use 2 slashes. Let's see. In the web viewer components, you can set up the URL already. So you will basically specify, in this case, is a file instead of HTTP, and then // okay, I'm gonna cheat here because somebody already described this process. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit here, go to this page. what I need to find out is how many slashes I need to use.
Okay, so the question is that.
Android, yeah, go ahead.
So the question is that would it have to be easier to then upload it onto a server rather than trying to figure out how many slashes you have to do to have it locally updated?
Well, it's right here. You know, after building the app, use the production path, which is Android_asset, and then the name of the HTML file. So it's not really too bad. It's just one more slash and then Android asset.
Okay.
So we'll give it a try. One more slash Android asset, and then the name, which is test.html. And will let it remain visible, and that should display right away because you know this is the home URL, so it should go there automatically. Okay, save. Go to build this app. Switch back to my command line prompt here. This time we install JS. Go back to the emulator. And JS is right here. Fortunately, JS has stopped. So it did not quite go to the home URL. But you can set it up to be a web-based little address. The only problem with a web-based address is your app is no longer self-contained. It will need internet access to get a job done, which may not be you know what you want. But this one did not work. You know, I wonder why.
Okay, so technically, if the app would need internet access, means that it can also work on the 4G or 5G network, or no?
Yeah, 4G. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. From your app's perspective, it doesn't know whether it's connecting through Wi-Fi or 4G. So it's all the same to the app itself doesn't know. But it's not working. So I wonder why it is not working. So 3 slashes Android asset dot slash text HTML. And this specifies the same way. So 3 slashes Android underscore asset. Name of your HTML.html. And then the built-in help doesn't explain that much either. Fortunately, no. Okay, let me see if I missed any error message when it starts over. Nope, it just says JS has stopped. So I guess we'll have to deal with this one a little bit later. Any other questions?
One
Yep.
of the features, I noticed that it doesn't have a radio button component. So in that case, you'd have to use a checkbox and then disable another checkbox if one was,
Okay.
if checkbox A was checked, then checkbox B would be disabled.
There are several ways to pick out one option out of many, because that's what a radio button is it's within a group where you can only select one. Can you use a list picker to do that?
Yeah. So,
But the only problem with the list picker is it doesn't show you which one you have selected. A list view will, okay, if you use a list view and you select one item, that item will be highlighted. So that may be one way to get around the issue of not having radio buttons. And list view is also better in a way because when you look at the select or selection, when you look at the selection property of a list view, it will give you the actual text of the selection, but you can also use the selection index to see which one, just by numbering, which one is selected. So I would look into list view, using list view to do what the radio button group usually would do. It's much better than having checkboxes and then have your own logic to only make sure that one is on at any particular time. Sure. Anything else? No other questions? How is your project coming along? I keep asking that question, but we only have 2 weeks left, okay? Approximately 2 weeks left. So I don't want you guys to feel that, oh, okay, I haven't really started on my project yet, and I have to find out, how to do stuff. I know several projects are well on its way because of the questions that I get, also from interacting with some of you. But in some of the other projects, I have no idea, where you guys are at or whether you have questions about that or not. So if you do have any questions about your projects, bring it here. Okay, that's what the lab time is for. I can take a look at your code and help you figure out, how to solve, specific issues. Or if there are limitations to App Inventor, at least I can take a look at your code and go like, well, maybe you don't have to do this for your project. We can do something else, or we can simplify this, or do something else, that will make your grade, better because of the limitation of App Inventor. Any specific issues you guys have encountered with your projects? Okay, all right. So I'm gonna stop the recording now, and I'm gonna take a break. Quote unquote take a break because I'm just gonna work on the web view thing.